Hello and welcome to the Providence College podcast. My name is Joe Carr. Let's talk today about Friar Athletics. Our guest is Jill LaPoint, Deputy Athletic Director and Senior Woman Administrator. Jill has been at PC since 2000, having previously been a Brown University Assistant AD for 2 years. Before that, she was a field hockey coach and administrator at Juniata University. A Pennsylvania native, Jill graduated from Lock Haven University and earned a master's degree from Smith. Jill, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Joe. Thrilled to be here. Thanks for having me.
We'd like to know a little more about sort of the management structure of the athletic department. Can you describe how it sort of works with respect to things like internal focus, external focus? I know each team has a specifically assigned administrator. Can you walk us through that?
Sure. So, as you know, our structure here at Providence has Bob Driscoll as our athletic director. And shout out to Bob, who was recently promoted to vice president. But Bob leads and oversees our entire organization. And really then next on the organizational chart really has myself and Steve Napolillo. And my focus being more on the internal side of the department, and Steve's focus really being specific to the external side. And then we have a series of other incredibly talented associate ADs and assistant ADs who oversee the management of other areas in the department like athletic compliance, business and finance, media relations, student development, ticket, marketing and promotion, sports medicine, and the list goes on and on. So so the structure, at the top is Bob, and then filtering there are just all kinds of talented people who help us, build the success that we have through the department.
And each sport has one of you assigned, right? And how does that work? And what does that sort of mean?
Yeah. So regarding the administration of our teams, each team has a sport administrator or a sport supervisor. And, that tends to be either one of the assistant or associate athletic directors. And, I serve as the sport administrator for several programs, men's and women's, cross country, women's basketball, field hockey, and volleyball. And then, as I mentioned, some of the other assistant and associate ADs serve in that role for other programs. The job of the sport administrator really is, to partner with the coaches to help make them successful, help them be successful, and help the program succeed. It's really about forming a bond between you and the coach, understanding how that coaching staff operates, and just trying to get at what the coaches need to build and maintain a successful program. And it's funny, a lot of people think you have to have played a sport or coached a sport in order to serve in the sport administrator capacity, and that's really just not the case. Your job as a sport administrator isn't to draw up plays or even to manage X's and O's, but really I think to do the sport administrator job effectively, you really need to understand and appreciate what goes into building and maintaining program success, understanding the pressures and the stresses that coaches live with, and really understanding the nuances of the sport, and just having a trusting relationship with coaches and the student athletes as well. I think it's important that a sport administrator is seen by the student athletes as part of the team and not the administrator who, it comes around when there's an issue or a problem. So it's a really special role. It's one of my favorite duties in my job, and it's just really a pleasure to partner with coaches and student athletes and try to do what you can to partner with them to help them be successful.
Someday you ought to take out a calculator and a calendar and try to figure out how many Friar games, and I guess in the case of cross-country meets, you have seen over the past 19 years, right? It could be a pretty big number.
Yeah, it's just great fun, and it's tremendous joy to go out there and watch practices and see what's happening behind the scenes with the coaches, and then to go out and watch the student athletes execute game plans and whatnot. It's just it's really an awful lot of fun.
So every NCAA program, athletics program, has a senior woman administrator, a role you have held here since you came here in 2000. What does that mean?
Gosh, I'm glad you've asked that question. There's actually a good bit of misunderstanding about that designation, really both within our industry and outside of it. It's actually a designation. And I applaud you. You said the senior woman administrator. It is that. It's the senior woman administrator. Some folks tend to call it the senior women's administrator, and those two
would be
things
a different thing, wouldn't it?
Have very different meaning. And so the SWA, it's a designation. It's a leadership role. It's not a job or a position that carries particular duties. So the NCAA defines the SWA as the highest ranking female involved in the management of an institution's collegiate athletic program. And the intent is really to promote meaningful representation of women in the leadership and management of college sports. So specifically, to provide leadership to men's and women's sports, not just specific to leading a women's sports program or simply overseeing gender equity.
As you indicated already, you are the administrator for at least one men's sport, and some women's sports have a man as their administrator, right? So it doesn't line up. Of course, correct. That way it would be too much for one thing, because we have a lot of women's sports, as do, I guess, all NCAA programs, appropriately so. That's interesting. I mean, it makes good sense when you describe it that way. Thank you for that. What is it that drew you to PC, and what's made you stay here for 19 or so years now?
Yeah, hard to believe. It's just under 20 years. But actually, a Providence grad brought me to Providence College back in, I think it was September, October of 2000. I worked at Brown University in the athletic department. And my supervisor at the time was Dan Egan, who was class of 1992, Providence College class of 92. And Dan was my supervisor, and we worked together for the time that I was at Brown. And one day he approached me and said, there's this opening at Providence College, and that's my alma mater, and I really think you should take a look at it. And so I'd only been at Brown for really just under 2 years at that point, and really, certainly wasn't looking for my next step. But as Dan and I talked about the opportunity a little bit more, it became clear to me that this was an opportunity that I really needed to look at. And so I did, and things worked out. And I really couldn't be more pleased, because I just love every day of the nearly 20 years that I've spent here in this department. It's interesting. Usually in athletics, you have to pick up your life and move very far away to take your next position. So I was really fortunate to be at Brown and just really cross over Route 95 to take on my next opportunity. And I often will tell people I love both institutions for lots of different reasons, but I do feel like I landed at the long-term one for me for the best. I'm just thrilled that I've had all these great years here at Providence College.
So you were here when Bob Driscoll arrived. Congratulations. You've done a nice job bringing him along.
That's right. I came on at Providence, and the vacancy happened, and I was incredibly fortunate to serve on the search committee when Bob came to Providence, and feel so blessed and grateful to have worked under him for all these years.
So of all the things that have changed since 2000 in the Friar Athletics Department, and by the way, we could reframe that and say in the past month, because things happen so fast here, but what are the things that make you most proud from a big picture perspective?
Oh gosh, that's a tough question, because there's so much, but I think I would have to first point to the academic success of our student athletes. Just last fall, our department earned a combined GPA of 3.22, which we're really proud of. 32% of our student athletes were on the Dean list, and just under 62% of our student athletes have a cumulative grade point average of 3.0 or better. And so we're just incredibly proud of that success. And when you think about, student athletes needing to excel both in the classroom and on the playing field or the pool or the court, we're just really proud that our student athletes are excelling in both arenas.
Let me set one on a tee for you here. And when we talk about students doing well in the classroom, that's particularly impressive, isn't it, in the context of the extra challenges that they face with respect, especially to their schedules?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the time demands on our student athletes are really significant, and they manage them well, and we do our best to try to always provide them with the tools necessary to maximize their time and to use their time well. And we're fortunate to have just an outstanding Office of Academic Support Services who help our student athletes with their time demands and their schedules. And and our coaches understand as well that student athletes have their job as students, their job as athletes, and then they also are trying to juggle having an enjoyable social life while they're here on campus. So there are stresses and pressures, and the time demands are great, but the benefits of being a student athlete are fantastic as well. So we'll take that.
As you look to the future, what do you see as some of the opportunities with respect to Friar sports for growth and even, let's call it, improvement?
Well, I would say specific to women's sports, I would love to see more people in the stands. at any of our women's athletic events. If anyone's out there who's listening and hasn't been to a Friar women's athletic event, I would encourage you to take a look at friars.com and peruse the schedules and come out to a game. We've got impressive athletic facilities, great coaches, just really outstanding young women who are competing for us, and the competitions they're exciting and competitive. So I know that's one of the things for me, looking at our women's sports, that I would love to see not only on our campus but in society, more people jumping on and becoming fans and spectators of women's sports.
We're recording this on Valentine's Day, so just a few days ago was the Pink Out Friartown women's basketball game the previous Sunday against St. John's. I was pleased to be there and enjoy that, and I'd like to echo kind of what you said, because it is high-level performance. Mulaney Gym, for example, is a fantastic place to watch a basketball game. It couldn't be much better. And that was a nice crowd and a nice atmosphere and a big event for an important cause, breast cancer awareness and support, and also specifically in support of a PC staff member, Jen Rivera, who's dealing with that right now. So a really nice event, and I suspect that made you feel pretty good.
It did. Our women's basketball program and our marketing and promotion staff did an absolutely outstanding job of partnering with Jen's office here on campus, the Office of Academic Support Services, to come together on this Pink Out event in support of Jen. And she's had such a positive impact on the college, and to see so many people from across campus come out to support her in the cause was really very, very special.
So 3 years from now, we'll be talking about the 50th anniversary of Title IX. 50 years, how about that? Let's talk a bit more about that. I'm sure it's something you have put a lot of thought into during the course of your career. What, from a broad perspective, has been the impact of Title IX? Well,
the statistics and the growth of girls and women in sport since the passage of Title IX is incredible. And, what we know for a fact is that girls who participate in sports, they're more likely to get better grades in school. They have higher levels of confidence and self-esteem. They have a more positive body image of themselves, and they experience a higher state of psychological well-being. So, the impact is just undeniable. And it's fantastic to see the emergence of some new sports and to see the growth in others. So, the passage of Title IX is really done amazing things for girls and women in sport.
It's fun to see the national profile, international profile of some NCAA women's sports now, too. When we think about in the spring, it's kind of fun to watch the softball tournament, on television. Women's basketball, of course, is terrific on television. These things must have been unimaginable when Title IX came into being back in 1972. Yeah,
I imagine that is the case. I was 5 years old in 1972 when Title IX legislation was passed, and it's just, that legislation was instrumental in me being provided with the opportunity to play sports and learn and grow through sport. I'm grateful that I had opportunities that my mom did not have. And for me, those opportunities actually ended up translating into, an incredibly fulfilling and satisfying career in college athletics. So, it's, I'll attribute to that legislation that was passed in 72. Let's talk about you as an athlete. So you coached field hockey. That would suggest that was one of your primary sports growing up in Pennsylvania. What did you play? I did. I grew up in a small town in northeastern Pennsylvania, and our little town did an amazing job with youth sports. So I was fortunate to be exposed to, a variety of sports at a young age. I, in high school, played field hockey, basketball, and softball. Those are my three sports. But on the side, I'd play a little tennis and do some skiing. So I always just loved being active. But field hockey is the sport that I did end up pursuing in college. Through that, field hockey's been a part of my entire life. So I played in college. I went on and I coached a bit at uni out of college, and I did a little coaching right out of undergrad. And there was a point in my career when I did a little bit of a pivot, and I went from coaching and I moved into administration. And but I stayed in field hockey. I was able to maintain connection to that sport through some administrative roles. I served as the chair of the NCAA Division I Field Hockey Committee for 2 years and was on the committee for 4. And then, for all the years that I've been here, I've been the primary sport administrator for that program. So, field hockey's been a special part of my life for many, many years.
One of our favorite podcast guests many months ago was Diane Mattel, the current Friar field hockey coach, who, when you look around Providence College, you're not going to find many better athletes than Diane Mattel, who played on the U.S. Olympic field hockey team. So she's pretty great, both as a coach and as an athlete, huh?
She is, and interestingly enough, Diane and I grew up about 45 minutes away from one another in northeastern Pennsylvania. So I knew of Diane through my years, and she was an outstanding athlete, and as you mentioned, went on to be a member of the Olympic team. And then for all these years later to come back and then have an opportunity to work together has been really special. And I have, just tremendous appreciation for the job Diane does with our young women.
We talked about the big initiative involving the Pink Out Friartown game and associated activities through the course of this current season. But you're involved in a lot of initiatives of various kinds, and one that's gotten some well-deserved attention in the past year or so is the You're Never Alone in Friartown mental health program that you and John Rock, who was a guest not too long ago, really instrumental in shepherding and piloting. Can you tell us a little bit about how that came to be and why that's so important, and why is it distinctive here in the Friar Athletics program?
Sure. We've long been tracking on the fact that mental health and wellness was becoming more of an issue for our student athletes. Student athletes were coming to us with more issues, and so we've been tracking on this for a while. And back on July 1st, we promoted John Rock to a new position on campus. His new title is Senior Associate Athletic Director for Health and Wellbeing. And I think that promotion really speaks to our commitment to our student athletes. And we could have done a national search for somebody to fill that position, and we wouldn't have found anyone better than John Rock. And he is actually the guy who came up with the phrase "You're never alone in Friartown." And so grateful to John for coming up with that. And it's taken off, and it's been incredibly impactful. As we talked about earlier, our student athletes are under a great deal of stress and pressure and time demands, and we're really just committed to doing the best we can to provide them with the tools and support that they need to manage all of those things. And John will often say, and we talk to our student athletes, it's important to destigmatize the whole notion of mental health, and make sure people know and our students know that it's okay to not be okay. So we're incredibly committed to that, and one thing that's exciting that's coming up, the Big East Conference is actually also very committed to student athlete mental health and well-being, and this coming June they'll be sponsoring and hosting the third Big East Conference Student Athlete Mental Health Summit, and Providence College will actually be hosting that event. So we've been in the process of planning that event for quite some time, and we look forward to colleagues from the 9 other Big East Conference institutions coming to Providence College and spending some time together with experts in the field and our colleagues just to figure out how we can do that even better, how we can support our student athletes in better ways and in new ways.
That kind of work must be particularly rewarding because, for one thing, you'll have long-term impact on a student athlete who gets involved in this kind of programming, but it would seem like an environment like this is a place where you can really make things work. You have a group of people, they're in one place, there are support services attached to the initiative and the associated programming, so there's a lot there, isn't there?
There is, and it's nice that we're coming to a campus, as you mentioned, and the first 2 years of the summit, the targeted group or the folks that came to the event were student athletes and administrators, and in this third go around of hosting the mental health summit, we'll be bringing coaches into the conversation, and I think that's incredibly important. Our coaches spend an incredible amount of time with our student athletes, and the relationships that are built there are just incredible, and it's important to have the coaches involved in that conversation. So in this third iteration of this summit, we'll have administrators, student athletes, and now coaches as well, all coming together for this important conversation.
So during basketball season, we should talk about the Friar basketball team, don't you think? The women's team has really taken a few steps forward this year. They're around 500 in the Big East, and things are pretty exciting.
It's been a really fun season for Providence College women's basketball this year. This is Coach Crowley's third season with us, and he and his staff are just doing great things with the program. This year they've got terrific senior leadership in Yo-Yo and Maddie and Clara, and they've got just a terrifically talented group in their freshmen and sophomores. So we're incredibly pleased with where they are and just so excited for the great things that we're sure to come in the future for that program. They've positioned themselves right now very well as we near the end of the season, heading into the Big East tournament, and they're currently tied for third place with 3 other teams right now. So there's a lot of parity in Big East women's basketball, and it's going to be interesting to see how things shake out. But no doubt, Joe, we are really excited about where this program is going.
I shouldn't ask you this without having given you a chance to prepare, and I probably should have looked it up myself, but when's the next home game? Can you think of that?
So the next home game will be Saturday, February 23rd. We'll be playing Creighton. Creighton's actually our travel partner. So we'll be playing them on the 23rd. It's a 4 o'clock game. Our men will be playing Marquette at noon. And then hopefully folks will leave the dunk, come back to campus, and catch the women's action against Creighton at 4 p.m.
Sounds to me like a good way to spend a day.
Great. Couldn't agree more.
Can't possibly go wrong. So you grew up in Pennsylvania, as you indicated, northeastern Pennsylvania. Who are some of your favorite teams? What sports are your favorites to follow?
Well, of course, having lived in New England for the many years that I have at this point, I'm obviously a Red Sox fan and a Patriots fan. I love all sports. Give me the TV and the clicker and, whatever sport I come across, I love to watch. But in addition to sporting events, we go to a lot of them. You alluded to that earlier. So a lot of times, if I had a chance to take tickets to a game or tickets to a theater, you might find me opting on the side of heading to the theater. But I love all sports, and whatever's on or what's ever in front of me, I'm probably enjoying it.
Do you have a favorite athlete?
Oh gosh, a favorite athlete. Right now. I've been following Lindsey Vonn for many, many years. I like to ski sort of in my recreational time. And so with her career coming to an end, she's one of the ones that comes to mind. I've always been fond of Serena Williams and what she's done for women in sport. And then there's the oldies, the Billie Jean Kings of the world, and the Babe Didrikson Zaharias and Annika Sorenstam, the list goes on and on. But, Lindsey Vonn and Serena Williams are 2 that I'd say are among my favorites, contemporary athletes.
Can't go wrong with either of them, that's for sure, can you? Well, Jill, thank you for your time today. This has been fun. We'll look forward to following the rest of the women's basketball season, and then moving into, softball's kind of really all underway, and moving to spring sports. We're in kind of a hinge season right now, aren't we? Transitioning from winter to spring in some ways.
Yeah, it's always fun. The crossover, between fall and winter is a really busy but such a fun time. And likewise, right now we're kind of concluding the winter season and really ramping up with the spring. So it's a terrific time of the year. Well,
Jill LaPoint, thank you again for your time. And as they say everywhere in this building, go Friars.
Go Friars. Thanks, Joe.
And thank you for joining us today. You can subscribe to the Providence College podcast at all the usual places, and they're available on the college's YouTube channel. Feedback is welcome at podcast@providence.edu. For our producer, Chris Judge, I'm Joe Carr. Until next time.